The moment you hear the name, it just conjures these images, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Thick fog, compasses spinning wildly, aircraft just dropping silently into the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are navigating the facts and the folklore surrounding probably the most infamous stretch of ocean on Earth, the Bermuda Triangle.
Or, as it's sometimes known by its much more chilling nickname, the Devil's Triangle.
For decades, this has been the ultimate maritime ghost story.
Yeah, a vast, kind of loosely defined region of the North Atlantic where allegedly the very laws of physics seem to just suspend themselves, swallowing ships and planes without a trace.
So our mission today is to really understand the scope of the legend, to look at the chilling incidents that really fueled the paranoia, and most importantly, to investigate the scientific and, well, the psychological explanations for it all.
And you have to start in one place.
You do. The case that launched 1,000 conspiracy theories. Flight 19.
This happened right after World War II, December 5th, 1945. 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers, these are TBM Avengers, they take off from Fort Lauderdale.
And these weren't rookies.
Not at all. A routine navigational training exercise, experienced crews, reliable aircraft, and, the weather was good. The only thing they encountered was disaster.
And it wasn't some sudden explosion. It was this slow, terrifying descent into just utter confusion. What makes the case of Flight 19 so haunting is the documented radio chatter. The flight leader, a highly decorated veteran, was reportedly heard saying something truly chilling.
That transmission, as it's been documented in investigations and really popularized in reports, it just captures this total sense of disorientation. The leader reported, "We cannot be sure of any direction. Everything is wrong, strange."
And that last part.
The ocean doesn't look as it should.
Yeah.
They were lost, they knew they were lost, and then they just vanished.
Along with the search plane sent after them.
Exactly. A PBM Mariner seaplane. So in total, 6 planes, 27 men, all gone in a single afternoon.
That feeling of reality itself just warping, of a capable crew being totally betrayed by their instruments. That's what burned the Bermuda Triangle into the public consciousness.
It really is. The general area, the Sargasso Sea, it already had a history of strange maritime tales.
Right, becalmed ships and all that.
But the idea of a specific, geometrically defined deadly zone, that's really an urban legend that just metastasized in the mid-20th century.
Which leads us to a bit of a problem of definition, doesn't it? If we were to try and plot this notorious area, where exactly is it?
That's where it gets tricky.
The boundaries are notoriously fluid. The infamous triangle is, usually drawn connecting Florida, Bermuda, and San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
But depending on which author you're reading, the total area can just balloon dramatically.
It truly does. Different accounts claim the area is anywhere from, 1.3 million to almost 4 million square kilometers?
That's a huge difference.
It is. Some sensational writers have even included incidents that happened hundreds of miles outside that core area just to pad the list.
But the important takeaway here is that this territory, it encompasses some of the busiest shipping lanes and air corridors in the world.
Absolutely. Connecting North America, the Caribbean, Europe. Any analysis of incident rates has to factor in that massive volume of traffic.
Which is why tracing the legend's origin is so important. This wasn't some ancient mariner's tale.
No, it was synthesized, really, in the 1950s.
The initial notion of unusual incidents was sort of floated around 1950.
But the triangular shape itself, the foundation of the whole myth, that was explicitly introduced in 1952 by a writer named George X. Sand.
In Fate magazine, right.
That's the one. He listed several high-profile losses since World War II, with Flight 19, of course, being the centerpiece.
And then the person who really nailed the name into the public mind, giving it that unforgettable brand, that was Vincent Gaddis.
In 1964, Gaddis published his piece in Argosy magazine, and he coined the phrase, the deadly Bermuda Triangle.
And his work was crucial because he linked these modern aviation losses all the way back to historical accounts.
Some stretching back to the 1840s, He created the illusion of this continuous supernatural pattern. It was excellent dramatic storytelling.
But primarily sensational writing.
We have to remember that, exactly.
Okay, so now that we've mapped the boundaries, a bit of the historical context, let's get into some of the genuinely baffling cases.
Yeah.
The ones that make it impossible to just dismiss the whole mystery out of hand.
These are the stories that really stick with you.
They're the incidents where people and objects vanished under seemingly perfect conditions, leaving absolutely nothing behind.
And a classic case that predates the official name of the triangle is the Carol A. Deering. This was a large, 5-masted schooner discovered in 1921.
It was found hard aground at Diamond Shoals off the coast of North Carolina. And the scene itself,
Yeah.
it sounds like something from a movie set.
It was incredibly eerie. The vessel was fully intact, the sails were set. It looked ready to sail, but the lifeboats were gone.
And the crew.
Vanished. The entire crew, gone. But their personal effects, the logs, navigation equipment, all still aboard. The ship's galley even had food laid out.
So it suggests they abandoned the vessel in a rapid, almost instantaneous panic. Or they were removed.
Very quickly, yeah. Official investigations ruled out things like piracy, which was rare anyway in those waters.
Oh.
So what you have is a ghost ship sailing itself right onto a sandbar with no crew and no sign of a struggle.
That leads nicely to the case that involves, I think, the largest scale of loss.
The USS Cyclops, 1918. A massive U.S. Navy collier, a supply vessel carrying 306 people, and a very heavy cargo of manganese ore.
It disappeared.
Departed Barbados and simply vanished. It is still the largest single loss of life in non-combat U.S. Navy history.
And the vanishing of something that enormous without ever sending a distress signal, I mean, it stretches credulity.
It's almost impossible to believe.
We hear often that the heavy load, that metallic ore, might be the key to the mystery. Something about structural failure.
It is a critical piece of the puzzle. The Navy did later speculate that carrying such a dense material like manganese ore may have caused structural issues, particularly in heavy seas.
And that theory gained weight because of its sister ships, right?
Exactly. Two of the Cyclops' sister ships, the Proteus and the Nereus, also later vanished in the North Atlantic, both while carrying similar heavy metallic ore.
So, okay, an engineering flaw could explain why it sank. But does structural failure explain the silent, immediate nature of the loss?
That's the question.
If a ship is sinking slowly due to hull stress, a distress signal seems inevitable.
That's the dynamic tension in this mystery, isn't it? If it was structural stress, why the silence? If the failure was catastrophic and immediate, let's say the hull completely fractured and the ship rolled, it still defies the standard expectation that something should have been found.
Some piece of wreckage.
Right. Even a few months later, the lack of wreckage is the enduring question.
And the mystery wasn't confined to the ocean surface. We also have the back-to-back disappearance of two, state-of-the-art British airliners in the late 1940s.
The Avro Tudor passenger planes. The Star Tiger in 1948 and the Star Ariel in 1949.
These were advanced aircraft for their time.
They were, both operated by British South American Airways, and they vanished near the limits of their range while flying between the Azores, Bermuda, and Jamaica.
So losing one modern airliner is a tragedy. Losing two, virtually identically a year apart, in the same general region, without any debris or definitive distress message.
It elevates the psychological impact of the region. It forces people to look for an extraordinary explanation.
Because the standard causes storms, collision, human error, they just don't seem to account for the total disappearance.
And the human imagination rushes to fill that void.
Which brings us to let's call them the supernatural hypotheses. It's easy to see why, given these ghost ships and vanishing planes, people start looking for something outside our dimension.
Absolutely. The theories start to push the limits of reality. One of the most long-standing and kind of poetic is the idea that the losses are caused by residual technology from the mythical lost city of Atlantis. Believers suggest that energy crystals or mechanisms left over from that ancient civilization are still operating on the seabed,
causing interference with modern compasses and electronics. And the evidence they often cite, rightly or wrongly, is the Bimini Road.
Right, the submerged rock formation near the Bahamas. While, geologists generally agree it's a naturally occurring beach rock formation, those who believe in the Atlantean theory see it as a perfectly aligned pier or road structure.
Proof of advanced technology waiting beneath the surface.
Possibly malevolently, yes.
So then you jump from ancient history to modern science fiction. You get the time and space warps.
This is a favorite, mainly because it offers a perfect explanation for the total lack of wreckage. The theory suggests the triangle is home to temporary tears in the fabric of space-time.
Parallel universes or something?
Or magnetic funnels that literally suck objects out of our reality, leaving no trace for search and rescue.
And of course, you can't discuss inexplicable disappearances in the mid-20th century without bringing in
UFOs.
Of course.
The popular theory that extraterrestrial craft are responsible, using the area as a hunting ground for abducting crew or cargo or just entire planes and ships.
The ultimate combination of maritime lore and the post-war fascination with the unknown.
And this is where the scientific community steps in, trying to bring rational, though still terrifying explanations to the events.
Right, attempting to rationalize the mystery without resorting to ancient crystals or flying saucers.
Let's start with one of the most compelling mechanisms, one that sounds like it's straight out of a disaster movie.
The methane bubble effect.
A truly fascinating hypothesis. The continental shelves in the area contain these vast amounts of frozen, pressurized methane gas known as hydrates.
And the theory is that if something causes these hydrates to suddenly vent,
Like a seismic shift or a pressure change, yes, the methane would erupt, bubbling up through the water.
so what's the consequence when that bubble hits the surface?
The water, now saturated with methane gas, becomes frothy, and it loses its buoyancy almost instantly.
So a ship sailing over it would just drop.
It would sink in seconds. Laboratory experiments confirm this. No time for a distress signal, no time to even lower a lifeboat. And what's more, the gas, when it reaches the air, could potentially ignite, which might explain some reports of sudden explosions or fires.
That is a scientifically perfect way to sink a ship without a trace. But does
Yeah.
the geology there support this as a modern threat?
And this is the critical caveat that often gets skipped in the sensational reports. While the mechanism is sound, the U.S. Geological Survey has found no evidence of the massive catastrophic gas releases required to explain modern ship sinkings within the triangle in the last 15,000 years.
So the one explanation that is so scientifically elegant is geologically unsupported.
In that specific location, yes, it's a massive contradiction.
Okay, let's move to a more visible threat. Weather and ocean currents.
We can't ignore that this region is a magnet for powerful sudden storms. It's frequently swept by tropical cyclones, hurricanes. Before modern weather satellites, ships and planes often flew directly into unexpected, violent weather systems.
But beyond just a typical hurricane, there's a theory about highly localized, almost impossible to predict phenomena.
Yes, the air bombs theory. This involves these highly structured, often hexagonally shaped clouds, sometimes called honeycomb clouds.
They generate these incredibly powerful localized downdrafts.
Exactly, like a hyper-focused atmospheric punch. These massive columns of air hit the ocean surface at high speeds. We're talking wind speeds, potentially over 270 kilometers per hour.
That's easily enough to sink a ship or rip an aircraft apart.
Instantly, and it would simultaneously generate monstrous rogue waves.
And if something does sink, even if it leaves debris, the ocean itself is designed to make recovery almost impossible.
Thanks to the Gulf Stream. That is vital context. The Gulf Stream is an extremely fast-moving, massive ocean river, flowing at speeds up to 2 meters per second.
So any wreckage is just gone.
Swept away and dispersed rapidly across the North Atlantic, complicating any search and rescue beyond measure.
Now let's tackle the human factor, which often centers on those reports of compasses and instruments going haywire, the primary claim from Flight 19.
That brings us to navigation and human cognition. There is a real phenomenon related to the agonic line.
This is where true north and magnetic north align.
Perfectly aligned. And navigators are trained to compensate for the discrepancy between the two.
But in this specific area, that discrepancy disappears.
Right, and for a pilot or a captain accustomed to always compensating for a magnetic variation, if they cross the agonic line, they might mistakenly revert to their training and compensate when it's not needed.
Which would cause a gross navigational error.
And send them miles off course over a featureless ocean. It's not a magnetic curse, it's a navigational double negative.
And you couple that with the psychological phenomenon of spatial disorientation.
A major factor, especially for pilots. When you're flying over a vast, featureless ocean, particularly at night or in bad weather, you lose all visual reference points. Your brain is starved of sensory input.
And you feel like you're turning left, but you're actually banking right.
Precisely. Pilots begin to distrust their reliable instruments and revert to what their body is telling them, which is now completely confused. They report instrument failure when in reality their own perception is compromised.
Which leads them into spiral dives, or they misjudge their fuel reserves.
A critical concern for those older aircraft like the Avro Tudors, which were operating at the very edge of their range.
So we have scientific, meteorological, and psychological explanations that collectively could account for many types of loss in this busy, challenging area. But here's the ultimate pivot. What does the critical analysis say about the entire premise? Is the Bermuda Triangle actually more dangerous than any other part of the ocean?
This is the moment where the legend fundamentally collapses under the weight of statistics. In 1975, a researcher named Larry Kirsch published his definitive work, The Bermuda Triangle Mystery, Solved.
And he didn't just speculate. He went through the records of every single incident cited by the sensational writers.
Painstakingly, he cross-referenced all these supposed mystery losses with official records, insurance reports, weather data.
And what did he find?
He concluded unequivocally that the actual number of ships and aircraft missing in the triangle is not statistically greater than in any other heavily traveled ocean area of a comparable size.
So the mystery was manufactured.
He found that sensational writers like Gaddis and Berlitz had consistently exaggerated the accounts. They omitted critical facts. They ignored known stormy weather or documented mechanical problems. They stretched the boundaries of the triangle to include unrelated accidents.
He even found some disappearances that weren't.
Exactly. He documented one case where an author claimed a plane vanished, but it had actually crashed off Daytona Beach in front of hundreds of witnesses, and it was widely reported in the papers at the time.
So it's selective reporting and sensationalism, not magnetic anomalies or aliens.
That is the hard statistical truth, and if you want hard financial evidence, look at Lloyd's of London.
The major marine insurance market.
They do not charge higher insurance rates for vessels passing through the Bermuda Triangle. If there was a statistical increase in losses, their premiums would absolutely reflect it.
And the government doesn't even recognize it.
The U.S. Board on Geographic Names doesn't list it. The U.S. Coast Guard and Navy attribute incidents to environmental factors and human error. A 2013 study of the world's 10 most dangerous waters for shipping didn't include it.
So if the mystery is statistically solved, if the Coast Guard, the Navy, the scientists, and the insurance companies all confirm this area is just a normal, dangerous part of the ocean, why does the legend persist so powerfully?
Because the enduring mystery resides not in the water, but entirely in our minds. It's connected deeply to human psychology, to a cognitive bias known as the Biedermeinhof effect, or frequency illusion.
We're biased toward remembering the bizarre, extraordinary event.
The plane that vanishes without a trace, yes. And we instantly forget the thousands upon thousands of uneventful, ordinary passages that occur there every single day.
We want the curse. We crave a grand explanation for tragedy.
Exactly. The human mind is wired to find patterns even where none exist. We find comfort in believing something extraordinary is at work rather than just accepting that sometimes. Capable people make mistakes in incredibly volatile environments.
And that the vastness of the ocean ensures that evidence is never recovered. So the true enduring mystery of the Bermuda Triangle isn't about time warps or Atlantis. It's about why we as humans feel so compelled to seek an extraordinary explanation for a place where the ordinary dangers of the world's busiest ocean highway, paired with simple human fallibility and brutal weather, are actually more than explanation enough. The next time you see a headline about a new Bermuda Triangle mystery, maybe ask yourself if you're reading fact, or if you're just feeding that very human need for a good ghost story.